what I want to talk about today, I want to tell you guys a story. People ask me this all the time, right? Arthur, how did you get started with technology? How did you get into the industry? How did you start doing all the things that you're doing? How did it happen? I'm going to tell you the story, right? It's a very interesting start, but it all starts with a girl. So let's go back in time to when I was 15 years old, a long time ago. Depending on when you see this video, depends on how long ago that was. But the way the story starts is there was this girl. And when I tell you, this girl was beautiful. Beautiful. When I tell you beautiful, she was beautiful. I'm not going to go into any more detail, but she's a very beautiful girl. I was in high school, and I really, really liked this girl, and I wanted to impress her. She wasn't the type of girl that's easy to impress, right? But one thing that was super clear is that she was really into computers, right? So she's really into computers. And I was kind of into computers at that time, but not as much as I was about to be, because I was determined that this girl was going to know that I existed. And I was going to make sure that it happened. And she kind of knew I existed already, because we literally had went to school together for 3 years before this in junior high school. And then we went to a special school where you had to take a test to get in, where you had to be really good in math and science and all that stuff like that. So we go to that school. And she was from the same general neighborhood. She was actually lived only a few blocks away from my grandparents. So she kind of knew I existed, but not really. Not in the way I wanted her to know I existed. So we were in this class, right? And it was an introduction to computer programming class that we were taking, right? And I could really care less about it originally, but she seemed to really care about this class. So that led me to say, if I want to impress this girl, we'll call her Cece, right? If I wanted to impress Cece, I needed personally to do well in this class. So I decided that I was going to, spend all of my day, morning, afternoon, and night learning everything that I could learn about computers and programming until I was barely sleeping. I was going to sleep at 3 o'clock in the morning, having to hop on the train at 6 a.m., getting 3 hours of sleep, and just reading books and testing stuff on the computer, and just being a crazy person when it came to learning about technology at a very young age. Like I said, I said 15, but actually 14 when this started. So 14 years old, I'm doing all this, and I get really, really, really good at this really, really, really fast as a result of all the energy I'm putting in and how elastic my mind is at the moment, and also the great motivation that I had in order to make Cece know that I existed, right? So lo and behold, my instructor starts to see how good I'm doing. And I don't know if he was a smart guy. I think he also noticed how much I cared about trying to do well and started to see why I might care. And he hooked me up. Mr. Turner, right? That's his real name. I probably shouldn't say that. Whatever. But if he ever sees this, he hooked the brother up and he was like, look, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to let you sit next to who you're trying to impress because I peep it, right? So I'll make sure she can see what you're working on, right? So he hooked me up, moved my seat, get me, and the way the excuse he used was like, you're doing really good, so I want to put you with the other people that are doing really good, who are really smart at this, so that y'all can all bounce ideas off each other. So I ended up sitting next to her, and then she started to realize really quick, man, you're really good at this. I'm like, yeah, you know what I'm saying, I do a little some, you know what I mean? I get down with the computers, you know what I'm saying? I know what I'm doing, right? And eventually we get to have to do a final project in that class, right? And the final project, you have to make a full computer program. Nothing serious, just a little computer program that you can show off that shows that you can make a computer process from beginning to end. And so I came up with this master plan that I was going to make a video game, right? Where the hero in the game has to save this the damsel in distress right, from the evil cheerleaders, which was hilarious if you actually know what's going on in this, because this particular girl, Cece, was not a cheerleader, but two of her friends that were always in my way, right, happened to be cheerleaders. So the idea was that I had to overcome the cheerleaders to get to the damsel in distress and save her, right? And the game is called Mac-Man. So I went through and I actually ended up building that, which my instructor was like blown away. I cannot believe you made this. So I made a whole like video game. And essentially you have to go through the process and you have to overcome the cheerleaders, get to the next level. And each time a cheerleader's try to do something else. And finally, if you get through all the stages, you save the damsel in distress. And she says, "Oh my goodness, Mac-Man, you're the greatest Mac of all time." And then you win the game, right? Which was dumb. But at the end of the day, that was how you win the game. So I made that. I presented it in front of the class, and everybody was very impressed by what I made, right? The girl was also impressed, but also kind of like, I know you didn't just make that game about me, right? But, it is what it is. Now, was it successful in the sense of, did she definitely know I existed after that? Yes. Did it work? No. I got rejected, right? In the long run, and maybe if I would have been, shot my shot right there, maybe that was my best opportunity, but I kind of let it simmer and, whatever, and got thrown in the friend zone. I got the let's just be friends. This is my first, let's just be friends. I was like, dang, well, better than nothing. So, that happened. But long story short, that ended up being the start of me getting good at computer programming. And I learned my first computer program at that time, computer programming language C++. And eventually learned Visual Basic, and then learned Java, and then learned a bunch more stuff. And, things continued to grow from there. But the story doesn't end there. I normally only tell that part of the story and not as much detail. But, after I was smart enough, right, to know that once I got the let's just be friends, that I was never coming out of the friend zone, and that was dead. So, I kind of let that go. But there's another girl, we'll call her A, right, who I actually ended up meeting through some other people. And this girl A, right, she ended up being my next motivation to get better at computer programming, which is, maybe I shouldn't admit this out loud. I don't know, but, I am. So at the end of the day, I meet this other girl, and I find out that she's on the robotics team at my school. And at the time, I didn't even know what the heck the robotics team was. I didn't even know that was a thing, right? But it was too late for me to join the team. So instead, I created an elaborate plan to be able to get in front of the robotics team. And I ended up joining the STEP team, which, the first time, me admitting, to a lot of people that I only joined the STEP team for this one thing, right? One, the STEP team at the time, for some reason, was very popular with everybody. So that was already cool. And secondly, the STEP team eventually was going to step at the robotics competition to kind of like hype up the show. So I joined the STEP team. I learn everything. I get good enough at stepping. I end up stepping at the robotics competition. And, of course, the girl A is there. And what happens is, we talk. And, nothing happens. But, we become, acquainted. So that works. But that's not really the important thing. That was kind of the motivation. But the important thing that happens is that when we win the robotics competition in my school, the person that runs the robotics team, who was funding everything, he takes us to his super fancy house in Manhattan, New York, right? And this is a house, mind you, in Manhattan, not an apartment, a house. And if you know anything about Manhattan, New York, if you have a house in Manhattan, you have to have a lot of money. This is like a 4-story, basically, building. It might have been 5 stories building that is his house. And it's pretty dope. And so we go to it, and I asked the guy, because I'm like very intrigued about what he's doing in order to be able to afford all this. And he ends up telling me in probably, I think in these exact words, it's complicated what I do, but this is what writing good code gets you. And I was like, psh, if this is what writing good code gets you, guess what? I'm going to get better at writing code because I would like to have a multi-story house in Manhattan because obviously that's dope. So, those 2 women pointed me in that direction and got me on the path that I'm at now, right? So, is what it is. So that's how I ended up, going down this path. But here's the other thing that I also picked up from those things too, is that in order for, this is probably super controversial. Maybe I shouldn't say it, but in order for those women that I just spoke about, or people in general to take notice of what I was doing, I needed to do some level of excellence as a man for them to acknowledge me, if you want to put it that way. So I picked up on that and I internalized that, right? If I want to be acknowledged, I need to actually perform at something at a high level. So I need to find things that I personally can perform at a high level and go do them at the highest level that I can attempt to do. And because I put that effort into learning technology early on, I gravitated toward that as being one of the things that I tried to do with some level of excellence, right? So, if there's any principle to pull out of that, pull that principle out, right? Excellence is magnetic, right? Become the one people can't ignore by doing something excellent, right? So, that's what peacocks do, right? In the wild. So, take that to heart.